What's going on to all my Murders in the Building fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again, breaking down the latest episode, episode 8, which was titled Fan Fiction, an episode in which we see ourselves on screen, and Jan, who has been my number one suspect, ends up on the floor with blood. We're breaking it all down here in this spoiler review, but before we dive into it, make sure you're checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, well, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert from when I drop new content. If you enjoyed this spoiler review, well, make sure to like and share the review. It helps out the channel a lot, but also appreciate the support. And in those comments, let's talk about this 8th episode. Everything that went down, the moments in the end, the middle, the beginning, the meta nature of this episode. And of course, you gotta let me know your thoughts, your theories, and predictions of what you all hope to see. And not only next week's episode, but how are things gonna wrap up? And more importantly, who killed Tim Kono? Let's talk about it in the comments, ladies and gentlemen. So before I give you all my breakdown and recap, just initial thoughts coming off this episode. I am in love with this show, and it has progressively become love. Like, it became like, oh, this show is cute, to, oh, I like this show, to I am in love with this show. And I just have so much fun with just learning these characters, the comedy beats, which the comedy shouldn't have been that surprising because literally they have two comedic icons involved in the show. But I will say I am beyond impressed with Selena Gomez. I've seen some of her films. Not that she was bad in those films, but I just never looked at her as like someone that I'm interested in seeing pursuing acting. But she's been great in this show. The drama's there, obviously. The murder mystery is there, obviously. I'm just so invested in this story, and I had such a great time in this episode. Again, seeing myself in the fan fiction, even though I'm not standing outside their condo apartment or what have you. But I just love how meta the show is, how much fun I'm having with this show. But that's just my initial thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let's talk about it. So let's break down this 8th episode titled Fan Fiction, as again we open up with myself, with yourself on the screen, because we have their own little fan group there. The Arcones, I believe, was the name that they went by, as they're just dying for the new episode, as are we every single week, which is, again, I just feel like this show had a crystal ball and was able to predict how much of a craze this show is going to be and how they're playing into, again, the urgency of the new episodes, the fan theories, the things that we all break down. It's just so fun to see ourselves on TV, right? But I love the opening there. And again, love the commentary of how the fan fiction say couldn't have been Sting. There's no stakes. And you all know how I feel about episode 4, my least favorite episode nonetheless. But I just love, again, how we're seeing ourselves on screen, which is always good, right? But moving on back to Oliver and Mabel, who are obviously still in the van at the beginning of the episode. They arrive to their destination as Theo punches Oliver for a very, insensitive joke in regards to, hear me out, and he punches him there and whatnot. But they're greeted by Teddy, who is there to give them a lift. And it's in this lift that Teddy's doing his best, like, kingpin, bad guy, mafia impersonation, when he is essentially telling Maple and Oliver as far as what's going to happen here. He talks about his past marriage and how that affected Theo, and Theo can't hear him because of the way he's seated in the car. But more importantly, he wants them to stop this podcast immediately and forget everything they've learned about the business that he's involved with all the jewelry and all that stuff. And I said it last week, and I'm going to say it in this review again. It blew my mind that he would be so involved in this podcast. Why would you even put yourself on the radar knowing that you're someone involved? Not with Tim, as we'll talk about, but at least with Zoe. So it was so mind-boggling that he would put himself in that position. And the show does exactly what I just said, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But Teddy pitches the final episode of Only Murders in the Building, as he wants them to tell the audience that Tim took his life due to loneliness. And I'm looking at my notes here, and I'm just saying, like, why would he fund them? And we'll get to that a little bit later. But moving on to Oliver and Mabel as they get a brief meeting with the fans there, and we see that Jan, as they are making their way to Charles's door, Jan opens the door, and you all know how I feel about Jan, but I feel a little something for it, and we'll talk about that. But guess Jan is a part of the crew now, ladies and gentlemen. As Oliver tries to fill them in, she's filling them in on regards of what they found in Tim's phone, which was very critical. Some very detailed notes by Mr. Tim Kono as they find out about everything that's kind of went down, and like I said, they learned everything that we learned last week. And we see Jan, she's spot on. She's like, and we mentioned this last week in the review, right? That it can't be Teddy. It's like, like it wouldn't. It makes it too easy that he would be responsible for both the murder of Chloe as well as Tim. So yes, Jan, I'll give you a point for that. You're making, even though in this episode she literally kept saying it's not him, it's not him. I'm thinking she's like deflecting the situation, but she was right. She was right. And Jan, I still have my suspicions that we'll talk about a little bit later. But moving on to, as it is now time to get the person involved that helped them get the phone, and no other than Detective Williams, one of my favorite characters. So it's in this moment here as they meet Detective Williams that we learn that she's actually running fingerprints for someone that left their fingerprints on Tim Kono's laptop for writing his suicide letter, which is going to be very key. But again, the comedy beats as she tells them, find out the who, the when, the what, and they're like, wait, the what, the who, the when. Again, the comedy of this show is just so funny to me. But as we watch them kind of get things kind of figured out, I can watch them solve anything. I just love this crew. They're so funny. They have such great chemistry. I don't know if you all watch HBO Mayor of Easttown, one of my favorite shows so far this year. Could you imagine if this crew was trying to solve that crime, how different that show would have been? But neither here nor there. I just have such a good time with this crew. I know that, again, you all know how I feel about Jan, and we'll get to her in a little bit. But again, there's still something inside of me. Even with the end of this episode, with her being stabbed or shot or however she got that wound, there's still something off about Jan. She's reminding me a lot of the character that she played in The Office, kind of the silliness of kind of matching Michael Scott, but neither here nor there. The food that she makes, and the time that they mention poison. They keep mentioning poison in this episode, and Jan got pissed at Oliver in this episode, and Jan's always making food, and again, Tim being poisoned and Oliver's dog being poisoned. Again, I'm not giving up on my Jan thing, but neither here nor there. Again, she just brings up that it can't be Teddy. She was right, but again, as Teddy said last week, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I'm watching you, Jan. I know you all don't think I should keep the Jan train going, but I can't stop. But moving forward, at this point, Oliver's in the crew, Jan's in the crew. Oliver had the chance to meet Cutter, and this is where they find out about the ring situation. And Jan again keep pushing the narrative that it can't be Teddy, which she was so right, because, and we even said that last week, it can't be Teddy. He can't be responsible for both murders. It will make the show kind of boring if he was responsible for both of those cases. But seriously, what I love about this show is just, again, how well this is written and how genius they kind of implement things as they bring in the fan crew into the situation. It's so funny that one of the members of the crew said the exact same thing that I said in my first review of the show. This show should have been able to be binged, but he's like, no, you gotta build the suspense. It's gotta be a weekly discussion. So again, I don't know if someone's watching me maybe. I know you guys are watching me right now, but I'm just like, everything I've said, the show has addressed in some manner, some way, how, in regards to us answering questions, asking questions. It's very meta. It's almost like I'm watching The Simpsons when they predict things. So I love the writing in this show. But the newbies are dropping facts on facts on facts as they're kind of helping them out solve the case. And Jan, again, kind of brings Teddy off to the whole thing again. She brings that food in there. Again, poison, I don't know, Jan. But it's time to get a flashback scene, which is, of course, if you all watch a lot of the true crimes, remember TLC back in the day, we get like the dramatized visualization. They essentially, Oliver sets that up on stage as they play out how it would have been the Deli family that would have been involved, Teddy and Theo, that they would have been involved in Tim's killing, which again, moment was hilarious. But going back into it, we see Jan has her little solo moment without the crew for the first time this season. She has a letter on her door, says that I'm watching you. So that, you know, all the fans out there that are Jan fans kind of takes her off of the case that she wasn't involved, which I still think she's some way, somehow linked into it. But who sent her that letter, ladies and gentlemen? Let me know in the comments now. I have my suspicions with the guy that is in contact with Charles's ex-girlfriend's daughter, Lucy. I have my suspicions on Oliver, or I should say Oscar's dad, that we'll talk about. But let me know who you think wrote that letter to Jan, and let's talk about it in the comments. But moving on, as we see the Purple Rain being made as they make their podcast, and it's now complete. You know, we see Detective Williams listen to it. We see Teddy sees the title, and we see the police take him in, and everyone's celebrating, everyone's happy. Ladies and gentlemen, we get to the moment here as I was just like, yes, show, give it to me. As literally the fan group says what I've been saying for the last 2 weeks. Why would Teddy help them? It makes no sense to put yourself on the radar and funding this podcast. It makes no sense. Yeah, he could have been pompous too. He could have been arrogant. Oh, they're not going to figure it out. But That was a question that they posed, which brings us to the final moments of the episode as we see Maple showing Oscar the video that Tim made apologizing for being silent for all those years. And, like I said, we get our scream moment. But wait, there's more as we see that the tox report has come in showing that Tim was poisoned. Jan, food, dogged, poison. Again, Jan, I'm watching you, but he was poisoned before he was killed. And they also see that we're outside when he was killed, so they couldn't have been connected to that whatsoever. But they're still obviously in trouble for Zoe's death. But interesting, we learned, again, like I said, that poisoning of Oliver's dog, and Charles pays a visit to Jan, and she's just conveniently on the floor. She's been stabbed. There's some type of wound on her side. As we end the episode again, I know you all want me to back away from Jan, but I just can't. There's just something off about her. But nonetheless, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I love this episode. Suspects at hand. I mentioned the guy, the neighbor. It was just so weird that he's still talking to Lucy. But I'm starting to think a little bit about Oscar and his situation. And just, again, that video that they played. And we know that Oscar's dad, if I'm not mistaken, was a janitor that works in that building. Wouldn't it be something that he killed Tim because of what Tim put his son through? That he put his son in 10 years, knowing that his son wasn't involved in that murder. And that would be, again, we've only seen his dad, once or twice briefly in this show. That can be someone we can keep an eye out for. And of course, there could be still the cat guy. There could be someone we haven't met yet. But again, my Jan radar is on, and I'm just thinking more and more about Oscar's dad. But more importantly, I want to know what you're thinking. Who do you think killed Tim? How did you feel about this episode? Your pros, your cons, of course, your thoughts and theories, and let's talk about it in the comments, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I love this show, and I really appreciate it that you all tune in every single week to have these discussions with me. So before you all leave, make sure to like the video, share the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, of course, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell, that way you don't miss any more other content. We still got 2 episodes left, which makes me happy, but I really appreciate you all. As you can see on the screen now, make sure to subscribe to the channel, check out my other content. Hope you're staying safe, and we'll see you in the next video.